my God, oh my God, please God, please God, oh my God. Oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God, 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 oh my God. Oh my God, please, God, please. Oh my God. Oh my God, please let me out of here. Please, God. Please, God, please let me out of here. Please, God. Please. Oh my God. 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 Oh my God.
The Woolsey fire, which is not far from the scene of Wednesday night's mass shooting in Thousand Oaks. Firefighters battled the fire through the night.
The intensifying Woolsey fire has quadrupled in size in just hours. Firefighters are doing their best to battle the raging flames as they jump from one house to the next.
My first memory of the Woolsey fire was actually from the night before, where I heard the fire was starting across over the hills over in Thousand Oaks.
We keep looking at this image of the 101 freeway that it looks like it jumped.
So
it's jumping.
They're blocking the freeway right now, you can see.
It was the next morning when I woke up and the fire had crossed the 101 a little bit farther south and started going towards Lake Malibu.
So this situation is developing and it's happening into the worst kind of situation because the fear was once it jumps the 101, a whole other area of neighborhoods will now be under evacuation orders. We do know that parts of Calabasas were under voluntary evacuation orders. I'm sure a lot of areas are going to be updating this in just the next few minutes, and we'll be checking on that.
This fire has now spread to more than 85,000 acres, which is about the same size as Atlanta. They're urging people to not only evacuate, but also not return to their homes because they still do not have a grasp on this fire.
I decided to stay because I felt I had the resources. I had an area of between the house and where other buildings and where other trees were that I could protect the house from the fire. So everybody started leaving Malibu. I had all my equipment, all my stuff lined up. I decided, okay, well, that's the time to actually put what I had prepared into action. At about 9:30 in the morning, the power went out, so lost a lot of communications. And my wife evacuated with the dog, and my son stayed to help fight the fire. We also got help from 2 neighbors, and then also the contractor who actually built my house just amazingly showed up an hour before the fire got here because he was checking on another home that he was building. Everything started really early in the morning, and then the fire actually hit here at about 1:30 in the afternoon. We started taking this barricade gel that you attach to a house to the hose, and we started spraying it in all the flammable areas of the house, under the eaves, on the deck, on the fence, on the front gate, anything that would burn. So it would have kind of a wet coating, so when embers hit. And then when it really got here, it started across the street at our neighbor's house. We ran across the street. We started spraying down his fences, parts of his house. But then my neighbor said, hey, you better check on your own house. And the fire had come down a dry stream bed because there's just so much material, dry branches and leaves and stuff. And it came around and caught the barn on fire. And we ran out there, brought out the fire hose, and there were spot fires coming up all around the property between us and the neighbor. There were trees catching on fire. There was anything that was dry just caught on fire because the embers were just all over the place. We had 4 palm trees in the front of our house, which were probably the worst, and those were spraying embers all over our house, all over us, and we were just dousing everything we could on fire. And those things stayed on fire for about 5 hours until they got down to the point where we could put them out. And then we just kept on putting spot fires out for, it went from 1:30 in the afternoon to 11 o'clock at night. We saved the house, we saved the neighbor's house, the house next door. The one behind us burned down, the one across the street burned down. So if we weren't here, if we evacuated, the whole place might have gone. At one point, with any structure that gets on fire, there's a point where you just know that it's too late, and we got to that point, and that's the only time I think during that whole experience where my heart really dropped and I go, oh my gosh, we can't save this. During this whole time, we thought the fire department was going to come by, but they never showed up. They didn't show up until the fire was over. And maybe it was because they were spread out all over the place, or they were protecting Pepperdine, but people called it the yo-yo fire. You're on your own, because if you left, you didn't protect your house, you probably lost your house. The city of Malibu did an awful job in preparing anybody for a fire. In terms of what we've learned or the community has learned, I think it's brought the community closer. I mean, people are really becoming active in actually recalling some of the council members and even the mayor of Malibu and the city manager. They want them ousted because they thought they did just such a poor job in handling the fire and even the aftermath. Just in my neighborhood, we've gotten to know our neighbors a lot more. And we're going to actually have a block party coming up in another month. That's just to get everybody together. But I think a lot of people are going to take things in their own hands. They feel that they can't rely on their city to take care of them or take care of their property. So I think a lot more people are going to stay next time there's a fire that comes through Malibu.